the ability to read, to write, and to communicate with data. And there are 4 distinct stages that you'll find in literature. The first one is the data analysis, the ability to explore and interpret the data that you have at your disposal. The data interpretation, can you understand what the data is telling you? Can you understand what the data is telling us? And we can have much data as we like, but we still need to use that data to make or to form sound judgments and decisions. And the last stage is to make decisions applying those insights that we obtain from the data that we have in order to solve or to deal with real-world challenges. So, the question is, what are the critical skills that are required for students or graduates going out of the workplace? So, there are 5 skills that I want to highlight. First is the data collection. Perhaps this is where the library can then come in to assist us. How do these students collect data? So, as I said, when I got the 0, that was the data that I collected from my teacher. When we discussed amongst ourselves with my friends, that was the qualitative data that we had. So there is quantitative and qualitative data that can be collected. So here we then need to understand, are we gathering accurate and relevant data? So when we are going to be teaching students about data literacy, we also need to factor in what kind of data are they going to use, where are they collecting the data? Because even in these days, there's something that is called ethics. Are they obtaining that data ethically? And then, of course, it goes to data cleaning, removing outliers and things like that, and data analysis. So for me now, I'm in food science. I deal a lot with data analysis, analyzing the data using various statistical techniques in order to extract meaning from that particular data. And data visualization. Can we visualize that data in order to understand it better? And the last one, maybe where the library can also assist us, is how do we then communicate the data that we have in order to make meaningful contributions to society? So data is not only important from academic settings. As a food scientist, for us, data is important in making decisions about new food product development. I'll share a little bit with you. It's also important from health. We've seen from Prof's presentation to make decision in classrooms. It's also important that data is used in order to make informed pedagogical decisions. So my journey with data literacy, I'll just share some challenges with you, which I think the library also needs to assist us here. Because when we think of data, as Prof said, now there's this thing of big data. And we also need to be cautious that data can sometimes be overwhelming. So you can have a lot of data that overwhelms you. So that is data overload. So the question is, how do we figure out how to manage and process these large data sets? And for me, I also had to learn some of the technical skills. How do I use particular tools, such as, for example, SPSS, Unscrambler, in order to process that data? Perhaps, Prof, that is a question that we are asking, that when these students are leaving the institution, can they still have access to those kinds of tools in order to make use of the data that they have? So there also needs to be technical skills that one possesses in order to have accurate or competent data literacy skills. Interpretation pitfalls. So once you've analyzed the data, you then need to make interpretations of that data that you have at your disposal. And I'm now fortunate to be a supervisor, and I see that, for example, even in myself when I was a student, it's very easy to write an introduction, beautiful. Materials and methods, beautiful. We just say to the students, convert that one to past tense. But now when they have to discuss the results and discussion, that is where the problem is. And so now there could be interpretation pitfalls. So those are things that we then begin to think about going forward. But as an individual, what can you do I think it's not something that is going to happen overnight. And I like the idea that this could be a scaffolded process from first year up until postgraduate. So we need consistent practice. It's not enough just to send the students for one day to the library and say, go and do data literacy workshop. And then we leave them, we'll see them when they come back to first year. So we need to have a consistent practice and also collaboration. Librarians and also the academics. I already have some ideas that we can use. For example, we put some data on Isango, on the platform that CPUT has. But what if we could also tap into that data to use it for simulations, where we can teach students with data. Sometimes maybe they don't need to do practicals in the lab if we don't have space, where we can use that data that we already have on the CPUT repository as a form of simulations that students can use that data for teaching and learning. And we also, that's why I say we need to leverage the resources that we already have. I know at the library they've got some resources for data management and all of those things. So how do I use data literacy in my current role? So as I said, I'm a scientist, so we do a lot of research, and part of that includes, for example, one of the projects that I work with, we looking at edible insects. So we then need to communicate the results or the findings that we have via conferences and whatnot. But also on teaching and learning, so we need to design curriculums that are responsive to industry's needs. And those curriculum then should also be data-driven, especially in terms of decision-making. We published a study in 2020, which was looking at, before COVID, how students were using the online platform, which is the learning management system. And that has driven us now to conduct everything that we do on the LMS, because we already had data that we were using there, looking at things like, for example, type of access, when do students access the learning management system, and so on. And in terms of teaching, we are also using the learning management, learning analytics in order to inform our decision, especially with teaching, to see when are students utilizing the LMS more, when are they submitting more, how are they accessing the learning management system. At the department level, we have a course that we run with Prof. Chidiane, but again, this is late because we do this at a fourth year, where we teach students how to use software such as SPSS. Perhaps we need to think about how we can cascade these kinds of things from first year. So in the workplace, data is, companies are increasingly looking for graduates that can interpret data, graduates that can use data in order to drive business outcomes. So whether it's in marketing, whether we are talking about operations, whether we're talking about food safety, so data literacy is becoming now a highly valued skill by employees. So it's something that we need to consider. Let me show you with an example. So some of you may remember around 2017, 2018. As a country, we come from difficult times. There was a time when we were told that a polony could kill you. So, and us who are in the food industry, we are sometimes in the firing line because consumer says, you guys are killing us because we are food scientists. So there's this thing that happened, which was listeriosis. Listeriosis is is an outbreak that results from a microorganism which is called Listeria monocytogenes, and mostly it's found in soil, in vegetables, and all of those things. So in food processing, what basically happens is that there are temperature sensors that are used to monitor the temperature of a food product during processing. And such information needs to relate to the food scientist that we are within or we are outside specification. So if the temperature is low to a certain level, it needs to trigger some response so that the corrective action can be taken. So if you have got a food scientist that does not know how to deal or interpret data and especially trends, then it becomes problematic. Then things like listeriosis happen. In the future, we are going to be eating food products which contains what we call edible insects, mopani worms, black soldier fly, and all of those. So that is the research that we are doing. So in our case, why is data important? So then our students need to be well versed in terms of what are the consumers perceiving edible insects to be in food products. At the moment, consumers are telling us that yes, they are willing to consume edible insects as a source of protein, but only if they are added in an unrecognizable form, in an ingredient format, right? So we then need to gather that data from consumers in order to make decisions in what type of food products we can use edible insects. We can talk about if you've got a food products, there's a nutritional information that needs to go there. So that is data that someone needs to interpret. So it's something that is very important that we it's a skill that every food scientist should have. So the end is nigh. Now to answer the question, could data literacy be a skill that bridges the gap between academic learning and real-world application? And I think as an audience, as you are sitting here after listening to me, you perhaps have an answer to that question. But what I want to ask is, what can we do? What do we need to do? I think we need to have a broader conversation about collaboration for curriculum development, particularly librarians and academics, so that we can be able to bridge the gap between education and also the industry as far as data is concerned. It's something because I also see librarians play a crucial role in ensuring that students gain insights and skills that are required, especially with regards to data literacy. And just in conclusion, so we see that data literacy is an essential skill in today's workplace, spanning in terms of various industries, whether you're a food scientist, whether you're in marketing, whether you're in operations, and it involves a wide range of skills, from analysis, as Prof said, to communication and decision making going forward. So I see the collaboration between librarians, academics, and industry partners as a key role, especially to design and develop curriculums that are responsive in order to solve societal problems. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't take too much of your time. Thank you.